What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Addiction Network. It is a lovely Thursday night. No football tonight. A little bit sad about that, but glad that we were able to squeeze in that Bills-Titans game that definitely made things a lot better for fantasy, a lot better for the regular season. Glad that we were at least able to get that out. So I will take the lack of Thursday night football, let everyone get rested, get ready for the Sunday and Monday night slate. It's a doozy this week. Got quite a few good games in the afternoon slate and the Monday night games specifically. Lots of key elite fantasy players going later on. So we didn't talk about them yesterday because we were just talking about the earlier games. Talking about the later games, I like pretty much every game, from the afternoon onwards to the Sunday night game and then the two Monday games. Really like this slate a lot. This is where I will be, mainly trying to target the afternoon games for DFS. Also talking a lot about, just guys that I'm wanting to start in seasonal leagues later on. So let's get into it. Won't waste any more time. We'll begin by talking about the New York Jets and the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins coming into this one as heavy favorites. New York Jets still there with Adam Gase. As most of you probably know by this point, but I'll at least, give the PSA if you've been under a rock. Le'Veon Bell was released a few days ago and then signed with the Kansas City Chiefs this week. We'll talk about that a little bit more in terms of the Kansas City game, give you guys an update on that. But in terms of the Jets, that means we're looking at Frank Gore and the Michael Pirine as the two main running backs there. But this offense has been so anemic, you're not really looking to start either of those guys anyway. You can pick up Pirine if you want to have a flyer for when they do eventually fire Adam Gase. Maybe they turn things around. But for this week, Dolphins heavy favorites in this one, 9.5 point favorites at home, 47 point over under. Dolphins implied to win, with about 28 points there. So should be a good offensive showing for Miami. And that's pretty much what we expect at this point going against the Jets. Not that the Dolphins have the greatest defense either. 15th in terms of points allowed for quarterbacks. They give up a lot of points to the running backs and 16th to receivers, whereas the Jets are pretty much the same average at quarterback, receiver, and tight end, but they give up a lot of points to the running back. So if you have Myles Gaskin this week, you are celebrating because of the fact that Le'Veon Bell went to the Chiefs and not to Miami, which means that Myles Gaskin can continue to be a waiver wire hero for you going forward. Going to be a really good start for him this week. So we'll not waste any more time. This is a pretty clear-cut game where we know what Vegas is thinking, and I'm on the same page. I think the Dolphins are going to mop up the floor with the Jets this week. That's pretty much been the case every single week. The Dolphins have been looking really good, with the exception of a couple down games. I mean, they played the Seahawks decently well. Their only real rough game was week 1 against the Patriots, but Ryan Fitzpatrick has been one of the better fantasy quarterbacks since he's been on this tear, like around the middle point of last season after he retook over for Josh Rosen. So I really like a lot of the Dolphins in this one. Obviously with the Jets, they're very easy because the only guy that we can really trust at this point is Jamison Crowder. Maybe you can make the argument for Jeff Smith if you're in like a super deep league and you're just absolutely desperate. Jeff Smith did see 11 targets last week, only had 3 receptions, but saw some red zone looks. So maybe he gets it into the red zone this week. So if you're looking for an absolute dart throw or a run back in DFS, Jeff Smith becomes slightly interesting, but I'm really only happy if I have Jamison Crowder in my starting lineup. Jamison Crowder is averaging the second most points per game in PPR of all receivers. Obviously, that is an outlier that should come back to the norm eventually. But the Jets, the one thing that they know how to do is get targets to their slot guy. And honestly, Crowder looked even better with Joe Flacco. So I was a little worried last week that Joe Flacco coming in would end up hurting his production, but apparently he didn't slow it down at all. We'll see what he can do against the Dolphins this week. I know the Dolphins have a pretty poor run defense, but I'm not excited for either Frank Gore or Michael Pirine. I'd be okay with stashing Pirine on my bench just to see what this week looks like, but only in the most desperate of situations would you want to start either of these guys. We're not starting pretty much anyone else on the Jets team. On the Dolphins side, I really like pretty much all of the main options here. Ryan Fitzpatrick has been absolutely dominant for fantasy, continues to get it done. We're going to keep starting him until he proves otherwise. Myles Gaskin, as we mentioned, the Jets' really poor run defense. Myles Gaskin should have a really good game. Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, you can throw both of them out there. Preston Williams finally had a good game was a little rusty to start the season, which we kind of expected coming back from that ACL tear. Normally takes a few weeks for a guy to get back into his own, and he really looked way more comfortable against the 49ers last week than he had at any point in the season. So I'm comfortable throwing him back out there. A good wide receiver 3 option. Mike Gesicki has been up and down this season, but he's been one of the better tight ends when he blows up. This should be another good matchup for him. And then you can start the Dolphins defense here. The Jets are pretty prone to committing a lot of turnovers at this point, and their offensive line has been garbage, so plenty of sacks to be had. That's pretty much it. Those are the main guys, and I'm comfortable just throwing all the Dolphins out there. Should be a really high-scoring game for the Dolphins. I have them winning 34-14. Shouldn't even be a contest. I'll be surprised if it's closer than this, but hey, I've been surprised before. That being said, I think the Dolphins win this one pretty decisively. Maybe this is the week that Gase gets fired. We won't know for sure until it happens, but go Dolphins. We'll free the Jets fans of Adam Gase soon enough. All right, jumping to my favorite game on the week. We've got the Green Bay Packers versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We got Aaron Rodgers versus Tom Brady. Rodgers coming back from the bye week. Gets Davante Adams back. He's been practicing fully all week. Looks like he is a full go coming back from that hamstring injury. So the Packers are a little bit more healed up. Still missing Allen Lazard, but for the most part, have the majority of their weapons. And same thing for the Buccaneers side. It's looking like Chris Godwin will be back this week, along with Mike Evans has been practicing. So there should be a full core of receivers for both of these teams. Excited about that. And Vegas is excited about it too. Give us a 55-point over-under. Packers are currently favored to win this game by 1, meaning this is supposed to be a pretty close game. Could easily shoot out. Packers, implied points of 28 versus 27 for the BUCS, but could clearly go above that. We've seen Tom Brady already throw for a 5 touchdown game, whereas Aaron Rodgers has been lights out up to this point. So it should be a very fun game for football watching, and of course for fantasy. Should be plenty of points to be had. Now the Packers have been above average at slowing down quarterbacks and receivers, and been very good at slowing down tight ends, but they are the second best team to play your running backs against. Outside of the Panthers, they are giving up the second most points on average per game to the opposing running backs. On the Buccaneers side, they have been better against the running backs than their numbers show. They faced some pretty tough targets the first couple weeks playing against Kamara and Christian McCaffrey, but we saw last week, even David Montgomery was able to have a nice game against them. So definitely not worried at all starting Aaron Jones in this one. And I don't really care too much about the defenses here. I think both Rodgers and Brady are going to be able to get it done regardless of what the other team tries to do. As I mentioned, I would be surprised if this game doesn't shoot out. So we're starting all of our main options here. This one's pretty easy. Aaron Rodgers has been on a complete tear. If you drafted him, if you had faith in him, you've been rewarded. You're going to continue starting him until he gives you reason otherwise. Aaron Jones, of course, is locked into your lineup. Davante Adams coming back. If you have him or you traded for him, good job. Now is the time to fire him up. Should have a fantastic game here. And then Robert Tonyan, definitely a decent start this week. I don't know what his target share is going to look like with Davante Adams back. Will definitely be a little bit lower than what we saw against the Falcons. I don't expect him to ever throw up 3 touchdowns in a single game again, but he definitely has the trust of Aaron Rodgers. And that's been one of the things when we know observing Aaron Rodgers is he locks in and keys in on a few guys that he has faith in, that he trusts. And based on the chemistry that we've seen through 4 games thus far, Rodgers and Tonyan definitely have that chemistry that we've not really seen from a tight end with Aaron Rodgers for a while. So I really like Tonyan in this one. Maybe if you're looking for a tight end option, you're not happy with what you have, you might be able to sneak Tonyan in for a trade while you had a bye week last week. Maybe whoever has him is kind of already forgotten about that 3 touchdown game. Might be able to get him a little bit cheaper if he goes off again this week. You're probably not going to touch him again. Tonyan could end up being the biggest surprise at tight end this year outside of Jonnu Smith. So this might be the last week to acquire him on a decent price. So bear that in mind. Jamal Williams did have 8 receptions the last time we saw him, but again, that was in a game without Devontae Adams. I don't think he'll be nearly as involved. Also, that was in a game where the Packers were in the lead for the entire game pretty much, so they were trying to preserve Aaron Jones and not get him dinged up. So I don't think we're going to see Jamal Williams as much in this one. You can flex him if you're absolutely desperate, but I'm trying to keep him out of my lineup if I can. Not really excited about playing either defense in this one, as it will be a shootout. Maybe there will be an interception for the Packers to have. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers has not thrown any interceptions yet, so if you're playing the defense in this one, I would take the Packers over the BUCS, but not really excited about either. On the Buccaneers side, Tom Brady, I think, is going to be a good start in this one. Leonard Fournette still dealing with that ankle sprain. We don't really know if it's a high ankle sprain. That's the assumption right now. So it's probably going to be a few more weeks before we see Leonard Fournette actually get back into the fray of things. Ronald Jones has been pretty decent in terms of actually getting things done on the ground. Been a little bit less efficient through the air. Plenty of drops this year, although he did have that one. It was a touchdown that they ruled was incomplete, and then when they reviewed it, they said because he was down, it wasn't a touchdown. So anyone that rostered Ronald Jones last week was a bit depressed by that call, but Ronald Jones has looked good. He'll probably continue to get the work. We're starting Mike Evans, and we're starting Chris Godwin. Obviously, if you've been hanging on to Chris Godwin, you're probably hurting at this point and really need him back in your lineup, so you're going to be firing him up this week. In terms of, Gronkowski, maybe you could convince me to start him. I think he's going to continue to see a decent amount of work. You're basically just hoping for a touchdown from him, but he hasn't seen nearly the same target share that we were hoping we could potentially see. Definitely looks a little bit older, but he's been getting a little more comfortable as we've gone on, so keep an eye on him. Keep him on your bench. Should probably at least be there rather than the waiver wire. Scott Miller is dead to me at this point. Tyler Johnson looked really good, but with Chris Godwin back, I want to see what the touch distribution is between these receivers with Evans and Godwin involved. So probably going to try to avoid the other options here outside of Evans and Godwin. Overall, I have the Packers winning this one, but it should be a close game. We got the Packers winning 35-31. Let's hit the over for this one. All right, we got an NFC West divisional battle that is honestly way different than I would have ever anticipated heading into the season in terms of how Vegas is anticipating this one to go. I've got the Los Angeles Rams, San Francisco 49ers. Now, obviously last year, San Francisco 49ers win the NFC West, and at this point, they've been struggling, dealing with tons of injuries. Jimmy Garoppolo looked pretty piss poor coming back from that ankle sprain last week. Definitely was not himself. Defense is completely banged up. They've lost a lot of key pieces. Starting to get a little healthier. We'll see if Garoppolo is able to, recover a little bit more and play a little bit sharper this week. Whereas the Rams have been balling, coming in at 4-1. I think a lot of people had kind of written them off because they'd been playing, pretty poor ever since they lost the Super Bowl. But this has been a good year for them. So Vegas actually has the Rams winning this one on the road by 3 right now. It's a 51.5 over-under, so they're expecting this one to be decently high scoring. I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that. I think the 49ers will play this one better. They had a pretty rough game against the Dolphins, but losing 2 in a row, I think they're going to come out swinging in this one. And I guess it will depend on whether or not Jimmy Garoppolo is able to perform well, but we've seen the 49ers defense be able to slow the Rams down before, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were able to, keep this a little bit lower scoring than Vegas is anticipating. So the Rams defense has been lights out against receivers. They've been average against running backs and tight ends, whereas the 49ers have been great at slowing down the run and above average at slowing down receivers and tight ends. So again, I'm still thinking from a fantasy lens. Not as excited about this one as Vegas is with that 51.5 over under. I think we'll hit the under in this one. I do like Jared Goff. He's been a decent start at this point. Probably can find a better starter out there, but check my rankings on fantasyaddictionnetwork.com to see if you're, spot starting him, if you have Russell Wilson on bye and you picked up Jared Goff off the waiver wire. I would play Matt Stafford or Kirk Cousins over him, but Jared Goff definitely a top 12 pick this week. You're pretty much guaranteed to start Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp every single week. But outside of those guys, I'm not really excited about any of the other offensive weapons here, with the 49ers run defense still being really stout. I'm nervous about the touch share between Henderson, Brown, and Akers. We've seen Henderson do this twice now where he has a really good game and then the next week he completely disappears. Akers had a really nice run. Maybe he sees a little bit more work in this one. Sounds like at this point they're really playing that hot hand approach. And if Henderson doesn't get off to a good start, we might see more Brown and Akers. This is just another one of those Ravens-like situations that I'm just trying to avoid as long as I can until there's some more clarity and we understand what's happening. If Henderson has another good game, then I'm definitely going to be more confident starting him going forward. But I feel like this is a good sell high moment. If you have Henderson in your lineup, probably want to get him out of there. Higbee and Everett, well, it's been going the way that a lot of people had predicted that Gerald Everett was going to end up seeing a bit too much work for you to really trust Tyler Higbee each week. That's pretty much been the way that it's been going last week, Everett out-touching Higbee by a good bit. Higbee did have that one good game in week 2, but other than that, it's been pretty disappointing. So I'm not really happy with either of these guys this week. Going to try to keep both of them on my bench if I can. Not starting any of the other pieces here, Reynolds, Jefferson, anyone like that. On the 49ers side, Raheem Mostert has been really, really good. And I think a lot of people are missing that because of the fact that he missed a couple games, and the 49ers as a whole haven't been that great. But Raheem Mostert has definitely been well beyond what you paid for him. So I feel like this is a really good buy low moment in your fantasy leagues. If you can get Raheem Mostert now, I think that's probably a good mood ahead of this game before people realize what they have in him. Deebo Samuel played on nearly 100% of snaps last week. I expect them to get him more involved in the offense going forward. And, he had some good games against the Rams last year too. He's not a traditional receiver, gets a lot of carries out of that backfield, a lot of, short and intermediate routes, not worried about him getting shadowed by someone like Jalen Ramsey. So I would be willing to fire Deebo Samuel in my lineup. Of course, you're playing Kittle. Don't need me to tell you that. And I think both defenses in this game end up having a pretty good performance. Jimmy Garoppolo, we're not starting him until we see that he's actually back to his productive self. But like I said, I think he'll be a lot sharper this week than he was last week. Jerick McKinnon was really disappointing last week. Hard to trust him going back into your lineups until we see that they're willing to, actually give him a decent touch distribution. But what probably means that he'll just go off for 30 points this week. But I don't have that much faith in starting anyone else here. Maybe Brandon Ayuk has a decent game, but the Rams defense has been pretty good against receivers, so I'm probably only risking throwing Deebo Samuel out there. But as I mentioned, I actually had the 49ers getting the upset in this one. I got them winning 27-24. I think the 49ers get things back on track. I still don't necessarily believe in the Rams. A lot of their wins have been against piss-poor teams. They could have beaten the Bills, but the Titans just, I think, exposed the Bills a little bit too. So I think this will be one of the first real challenges for them. We'll see if the Rams are for real this week. I don't believe it yet. I got the 49ers winning this one. All right, let's talk about the Monday game that would have been the Thursday night game that would have just been played. We got the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Buffalo Bills. Now, obviously, we've got to deal with the elephant in the room before we get anywhere else. Le'Veon Bell signing to the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, that is a huge blow to those of you that roster Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had been one of our buy lows this week, but now is someone that I'm way more hesitant having on my roster. But that being said, you have to keep in mind that with everything happening this year, with all the COVID specific rules and instructions, Le'Veon Bell is not actually able to practice with the team until he has had 5 consecutive days of negative tests. So that means that Le'Veon Bell will not be active this week. So if you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you can give one last hurrah here versus the Buffalo Bills, which probably isn't the best option because the Buffalo Bills have been a better run stopping team than a pass defense. But if you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire and you weren't able to trade him, or you're not able to trade him now, you can at least get one more decent game out of him before Le'Veon Bell comes in and ruins your week. So Clyde Edwards-Helaire will get the start, and then I feel like at least by week 8, maybe not week 7, but by week 8, Le'Veon Bell will be seeing the majority of the touches here. Clearly, the Chiefs felt the need to go after him. If they had felt that Clyde Edwards-Helaire was giving them what they needed, there's no way that they would have actually gone after him, in free agency if they would have let him go to another team. But that's just how it goes. Clearly they had a role for Damian Williams structured out when they signed Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the draft, and they're trying to fill that now. And I think from a fantasy perspective, Le'Veon Bell will end up being the more productive back. but that won't matter until at least week 7. So we'll ignore that for now and we'll go forward with week 6. 57.5 over under. Oh my goodness. Should be an absolute barn burner. Expecting this game to be close, although I'm a little bit suspect of that. I'm just suspect of the Bills in general. I think the Chiefs are going to come out and play this one pretty hard. Now, they have lost consecutive games in the past, but last year they had a couple losses in a row. But I don't think that's going to happen this game. The Bills' defense has really been bad at this point. Last year the Bills had one of the stronger pass defenses. Has just not been the case. Tre'Davious White has missed a few games. I think he'll be back this week, but I'm not sure. They hope he's fully healthy. The Chiefs' defense has been pretty good with the exception of last week. That was more of an anomaly. They've been really good at slowing down quarterbacks, receivers. They've been more of a run funnel defense, whereas I mentioned with the Bills before, better at stopping the run, but been a pass funnel defense, giving up the 5th most points to quarterbacks and the 3rd most points to tight ends. So this is going to be an absolute great game for Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. Absolutely love both of those guys every week, but especially this week. Pretty easy here. I did put the asterisk here just to remind myself to talk about Le'Veon Bell, but overall, you're still going to start Clyde Edwards-Helaire this week. Probably be the last week they're going to be comfortable doing it for a while. But Patrick Mahomes, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, of course, Tyreek Hill. I think Mecole Hardman is a really good play this week as well, with Sammy Watkins going to be missing time with that hamstring injury. And then, of course, as we mentioned, Travis Kelce should be the number 1 tight end on the week. And I think you can start the Chiefs defense in this one. I think we're starting to see some holes in the Bills game. And, the Chiefs defense has been known for forcing some turnovers. Starting to see a little bit more of the interception game come back from Josh Allen. Not starting Demarcus Robinson or Byron Pringle. You shouldn't have to do that unless you're in like an 18-team league. On the Bills side, I'll still start Josh Allen. Of course, you're going to have to because he's been dominant up to this point for fantasy. Devin Singletary, as we mentioned, the Chiefs have been weaker against the run than they have against the pass. Zach Moss should be back this week, but he hasn't looked good at all. TJ Yeldon actually saw a bit more work last week, but I'm not going to start anyone outside of Singletary. I think Singletary is a decent start this week. Not the greatest, like a low-end RB2, but you should at least be comfortable enough starting him. And then Stephon Diggs has been one of the biggest surprises this year. As long as he stays healthy, he's going to remain in your starting lineup regardless of the opponent. I'm sure one of the other receivers here will have a good game between John Brown, Cole Beasley, and Gabriel Davis. My problem is I'm not really sure who it's going to be. And as a whole, I expect the Chiefs to actually win this one pretty easily. So if you have to start one of these guys, I would probably put it in the order that I have it listed here. Brown, then Beasley, then Davis. But Davis has been getting more involved. So if you're in the need for a spot start and you have nowhere else to go, I think Gabriel Davis is an interesting play this week. Not starting any of the tight ends here, not starting the other running backs, and I'm definitely not ever going to start a defense against the Chiefs. As I mentioned, I think the Chiefs win this one pretty easily. I've got them winning 35-20. We saw the Bills get exposed last week to the Titans, and I think the Chiefs just continue to drive that nail a little bit deeper this week. So Chiefs get back on track, and Bills lose their second one. All right, let's talk about the final Monday game, the game between the Cardinals and the Cowboys. Lots of implications in this one. We're waiting to see, what does the Cowboys offense look like in the absence of Dak Prescott? Obviously, the, terrible injury that he suffered last week, pour one out for him for sure. Hopefully we'll see him in a Dallas uniform again, or if, considering the fact that they didn't respect him enough to give him a good deal, maybe we'll see him in Pittsburgh. That would be interesting to see. So I'm not sure, but we'll speculate about that later. All that matters right now is what's happening in week 6. And this looks like it could be a good game. There's definitely some reasons to believe that maybe this game will disappoint from a fantasy perspective. It's a 55-point over-under. Cardinals are slated to win this game by 1.5, so that's basically a pick 'em at this point, not really heavily leaning one way or another, and I feel like I guess it makes sense, the Cowboys at home, but the Cowboys have been really struggling overall, and now losing Dak Prescott. I really thought the Cardinals would have had a bigger spread here, so I feel like you can probably make some money betting on the Cardinals, but the Cardinals have also choked some games too, so we've seen both of these teams are ones that they're very fickle. They're very hard to trust from a betting landscape. Cardinals defense, they've actually been pretty good at stopping wide receivers as a whole, but we've seen the wide receiver one have some pretty good games against them, so I'm really not worried. about them. We've seen Kenny Golladay had a good game against them a few weeks ago. Last week, Jamison Crowder had a monster game against them, so not really worried about that number there. Pretty much starting everyone against them, and the Cowboys defense has just been atrocious across the board, so we're pretty comfortable with our starts here. My main concern is, for one, we haven't seen Andy Dalton play a full game for Dallas yet, and two, this is a primetime game. For those of you that have been playing fantasy football for long enough, you remember that Andy Dalton sucks under the lights on Monday night. Maybe that was a Cincinnati thing, or maybe that's just how he is. If Andy Dalton comes out and completely turds, remember that I told you that it was a possibility. I hope it doesn't happen. I don't think it will happen, but it's definitely in the range of outcomes because we've seen it a lot in the past when he played for the Bengals. So that being said, not anticipating that, I think there's a lot of good starting options here. You're starting Kyler Murray. I don't want to start Kenyon Drake. I really wish they would give more carries to Chase Edmonds because he's clearly the better running back at this point, but they continue to give more and more touches to Drake. You have to continue to respect that and continue to go back to him. So good matchup here. Going to play both of these guys. DeAndre Hopkins, one of the best receivers, should be the number one receiver on the week. And Christian Kirk has been getting way more involved coming back from his injury. I think you can actually start him this week as like a low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3. Not going to play the defense here on the chance that the Cowboys score a lot of points. We've seen that happen at this point, and the Cardinals defense hasn't been that great of a start anyway. Not starting Larry Fitzgerald or Andy Isabella at this point. Okay, on the Cowboys side, as we mentioned, if you're willing to risk it and you don't want to buy into the narrative that Andy Dalton sucks on Monday night, he should be a good start. On paper, he should be a great start. I'm just a little nervous about it just because of the Monday night thing, but call me superstitious. I don't really know. You're going to start Zeke every single week. Zeke is one of the best running backs in the league. Well, at least in terms of the volume that he gets. He really hasn't looked that efficient when he gets the ball, but it doesn't matter because they give him so many touches that he's going to continue to be a good fantasy asset as long as he continues to see the volume that he's getting. Mari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, I'm firing all these guys up again because I think the Cardinals and Cowboys could easily shoot out in this one. If they don't, then one of these guys is probably going to disappoint, but I don't know which one it is, so I'm just going to throw them all out there. And I think at this point, with the way the tight ends look, you're probably still going to throw Dalton Schultz out there one more time. Hopefully Dalton to Dalton connection to something. We'll see. Not going to play the defense on either side in this one, and Cedric Wilson, I'm not going back to that well at all. So hopefully this is a really high-scoring game. That's what I'm projecting it to be. I've got the Cardinals winning this one 30-27. Fingers crossed that Andy Dalton is actually good, and the Cowboys' fantasy value all across the board remains relatively the same. We'll see. But that is it, guys, for Week 6. I hope you guys are excited. We're already almost halfway through the season. It's hard to believe. Feels like it's been an eternity, and at the same time, it feels like it's just flown by. I'm just hoping that we don't get any more COVID cancellations, but at this point, you got to expect anything. So I appreciate you guys watching. Got a question here. Let's see. Tannen or Judy in flex? I rarely recommend putting tight ends over receivers in the flex position. So I'm probably not going to, even though Stephon Gilmore is likely going to bracket Jerry Jeudy with Drew Lock back and with no Cortland Sutton. I would probably still start Jerry Jeudy over Robert Tonyan in the flex spot. There's definitely a range of outcomes where Jerry Jeudy disappoints this week, but he's pretty much their only option in the passing game. So even if the Patriots try to take him away, he's been really good thus far, and I think he ends up having a better game than Tonyan. But definitely keep Tonyan on your radar. Keep him on your bench. If he ends up having a good week, then we'll know. But there's a chance that Tonyan comes out and barely sees the ball as well. So we have yet to really see him have a good game where Devontae Adams was fully healthy. So for what it's worth, hopefully that helped you. But thank you guys for watching. Hit me up in the comment section. We'll be cutting these videos up, releasing them individually tomorrow, and we will see you guys in some later videos this week. Hope you guys have a good rest of your week, and we'll see you on Sunday.